tried to get her here, but after last week, she was just knocked out after the fire hose last week.
Oh, the fire hose.
Bye.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Wait for your bagels.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, and all you kids back there in the peanut gallery, it's time to return to those thrilling days of yesteryear when men were men, the women were strong, and the children were all above average. Now, if you grew up in the 50s and 60s, those words ought to strike a little familiarity to you. So your job before we get started is to tell me where those things came from. The first words were ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages. There was a Saturday morning show
That's right.
that came on, and what was the name of the show that started out?
Matinee.
Boys and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages.
What about the Cowboys?
It's not the same,
Long John.
Well, no, we got to get this one first.
not the same reference as the peanut gallery, is it?
Nope, it's a different one.
Yeah, that's an issue.
It's a tough one, though. That was called the Big Top. Remember the Big Top?
gonna say Ringling.
Yep, that would have been it. Okay, now the next one was all you kids out there in the peanut gallery. Now what was that?
Howdy Doody.
Howdy Doody. And what was the Indian's name on Howdy Doody? Thunder Thud, you got that. And what was the clown's name? What was the clown's name? Clarabelle.
Yeah, that's right.
And what was the name of the guy in the buckskin?
Yeah, the what?
In the buckskin.
Oh, that was, Captain Bob.
Cowboy Bob.
Cowboy Bob or something. Buffalo.
Buffalo Bob. Buffalo Bob. Hey, not bad. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again. Okay, what was what his name of his sidekick was? What was Tonto's name in real life? Jay Silverheels. That's good. Okay, I'm going to get deeper now. There was another TV program at that time that had an Indian sidekick. The name of the program was Yancey Derringer. What was the name of Yancey Derringer's Indian sidekick?
Nobody knows that one.
Okay, his name was Pahu. I'm going to dig it even deeper. What was Pahu's name in real life? X Brands. See? X Brands. Isn't that something? Okay, now for the last one. Where was the place that where men were men, the women were strong, and the children were all above average?
Prairie, home prairie.
You got it, all the words almost in the right order.
Prairie home companion.
The Prairie Home Companion. Okay, who was the guy who ran that? Who dreamed that up?
Garrison
Yeah.
Keller.
Okay, and what was the name of the town in Minnesota that it was all dressed up around? It was a lake. It was a lake. Ah, Lake Wobegon. That's good. Now I got your brains working this morning.
Mine hasn't left yet.
It's amazing how much stuff you remember, nonsensical stuff, when you were growing up. But I think when you're younger, your brain's more pliable or something, and you remember silly things like that. Yeah.
Remember, I lived 3 lives.
Who?
I lived 3 lives.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I remember it, but
That was a real busy fella.
I was 14 years old before we ever had a TV, so I missed out on a lot. But I went to my neighbor's friend's house, and I watched TV there sometimes on Saturday morning, so I got to see some of them.
2 more, Mr. Lucky and Boston Blackie. Yeah, Boston Blackie.
Oh boy, Yeah, that's good. Well, I got one for you here. There was a program called Sky King.
Yeah.
Sky King. What was the name of Sky King's airplane?
That was, that Beechcraft.
Yeah.
No, not the model, but the name of it. He gave it a name.
Lady Bell or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Songbird.
Songbird.
Okay, now the next one is, what was the model of Sky King's airplane?
Beechcraft.
Beechcraft, wasn't it?
Somebody said Cessna? It was a Cessna. Cessna 210B. Don't even make them anymore. And what was the name of Sky King's niece? Penny. Hey, you guys, you're pretty good. They're almost over the hill as far as I am. Okay, today, Bible prophecy lesson number 249. We're going to do Isaiah chapter 27, maybe. We'll review 248. Signs of the times, I got a few, and a scripture of the day, and then we'll do Isaiah 27. So, Dean, open us with a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, we're just so grateful, Lord, to be here today, Lord. We just thank you for our many blessings. Thank you for your mercy and your grace. Be with Carl today, Lord, and lift him up with your Holy Spirit. Learn more about your word. Help us, just help us to glorify you each and every day. We're just going to disappoint you. Guide and direct us. Be with our president, Lord, and lift him up, Heavenly Father, and all these trials he's going through. Just be with us as we continue this week, and thank you mostly all for your coming. Please thank you for that.
Amen. Well, true to form last week, the batteries went out on my speaker, on my microphone, and so we lost the rest of the lesson. So I'm going to go through this and repeat it as best I can remember so that we'll have a record of it on YouTube. So in reviewing lesson 248, there's going to be a great feast planned after the tribulation period, and therein will be fine wine served. And the server during that period will be Jesus himself. And as we learned in that day, the Lord will dwell on the mountain of Zion. There will be one mountain in all of the earth, and that mountain will be in Jerusalem. Jerusalem will be elevated. And on the top of that mountain will be the temple, and in the temple will be the Holy of Holies, and in that Holy of Holies will reside the Messiah. And all nations will stream to that mountain during the tribulation once a year. And any nation that doesn't come up to Mount Zion to worship the Lord once a year will not get any rain that year. That is, they will be required to keep the Feast of the Tabernacles every year. We read that from Zechariah chapter 14. And in that period of time, the Lord will destroy all of his enemies, and all memory of them will cease. That gives us a clue as to what happened to those who are not found among the righteous. They will be destroyed, and that destruction is, the word for it is similar to annihilation, so there will be no more. And during this time of destruction, the righteous will be hidden in their chamber. That word chamber is shadar, and it is the same word that's used for the wedding chamber. And we know that the Jewish custom for weddings is the bridegroom will come at midnight, take the bride away to a place in his father's house called the shadar. It's a chamber prepared for the wedded couple, and therein they will reside for 7 days. Kind of hard to see how that would work, but I think that 7-day period is coincidental with the 7 years of tribulation. So the righteous will be entertained with good things for 7 years, and the wicked will be going through literally hell. And then we know that the borders of Israel will be expanded as God promised Abraham. Everywhere Abraham walked, he said he would give him the land. And that land extends from the Nile River up to the river Euphrates in Iraq today. So going to be a considerably larger Israel than it is today. Okay, the signs of the times here. Pope Francis calls for an epochal change. Rigidity conceals derangement. This sounds like his attempt to water down the Christian belief of the Church. And Pope Francis underscored the need for the Church to embrace epochal change, insisting that resistance to change always hides some sort of mental disorder. So there you have it. If you're not willing to change your Christian beliefs, the fundamentals, why, you've got a mental disorder. And addressing the Roman Curia on Saturday, the Pope says that tradition is not static, it's dynamic. And while proposing that what we are living is not simply an epoch of change, but a change of the epoch. Don't understand what those words mean, but it sounds like he doesn't want you believing fundamentally what you believed before. And a Pope cited a fellow Jesuit, Cardinal Carlo Maria Martini, the former Archbishop of Milan, in saying the Church has remained 200 years behind the times. Why has it not been shaken up? Are we scared? Fear instead of courage. These are words, Francis said, that should make us think. Well, seems how Pope Francis is what I believe to be Petrus Romanus, the last Pope. His characteristics and his belief system is found in Revelation chapter 17, and it's not a good thing, and he doesn't have much to look forward to at the beginning of the tribulation period. All right, a cathedral in Iraq's largest Christian community is going to be rebuilt in 2020. Wars and things in Mosul, by the way, Mosul was the site of the ancient city of, what was it, where Jonah ran, there in Assyria, and in that place there was, at least to this day, a Catholic cathedral, and it was burned down 5 years ago, and the Islamic State did it, burned it up, and so now they are going to rebuild it as a another bastion for Christianity in that region. Nineveh was the name of that city, by the way. And Nineveh is the site of ancient Nineveh is the site of Mosul. And so, as the article says, it's a very significant church because it was built from donations from the local people, agricultural workers. And so it's also known as Karakosh, and it's located 20 miles southeast of Mosul. So there is some good news. In Iran, back in the news, could the end of the Iranian regime be near? Well, maybe. Tehran is facing more pressure, and Iranian people are angry. The events of the last few weeks in Iran indicate that the country may be in for a repetition of the events in 1978 that led to the toppling of the Shah. Anti-government protests in Iran have reached a boiling point, with the streets of several Iran cities and towns reverberating with slogans demanding the overthrow of the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khomeini. And so this all sounds very much like what the uprising back in 1978, the words of it at least, that eventually led to the removal of the Shah of Iran. So, and this regime in Iran is bloodthirsty. Reports now are that they've killed about 1,500 protesters. And so this is not good. But the story here is the pressure is rising on Iran to make a deal with the United States because these the pressure on the regime is coming from the sanctions that Trump has placed on Iran, forcing them not to be able to sell any of their oil, and consequently they can't fund any of their social programs, and this is really ratcheting up the pressure on them. So we may yet see this year a move toward a deal with Trump. My anticipation is that that deal would be signed on Yom Kippur of this year, if we are lucky. So keep Iran in your eyesight. We may have a deal there. The angels, the herald angels that sang to the shepherds in the field when Jesus was born. And there is this nice picture of them. And interestingly, the angels sang to shepherds in the field, just ordinary people like me and thee. Didn't appear to Rome or to Jerusalem. It was shepherds in the field outside of Bethlehem. Our scripture for the day is Luke chapter 2. And there were in that same country shepherds. Strike that word country. There were in the same acreage shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flocks by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And that's what we're celebrating on the 25th, Christmas, the birthday of Christ the Lord. Now, the question is, was he born on December the 25th? All the evidence says he wasn't. He was born on Rosh Hashanah. But the interesting thing is, Christmas was originally intended to be on the winter solstice. The 25th is close to it, but it's not the winter solstice this year. But the point being that if he was conceived on the winter solstice in 3 BC, and you add 280 days to that, the normal gestation period of a human, you'll come to Rosh Hashanah 2 BC. So to those who say that Christmas is not really his birthday, well, Christmas in the eyes of the Jewish people is the day of his conception, and they believe that he is born on that day. He is conceived, he is alive, and that when the child is born and comes out of the womb, he's a year old. So whether you are a Jewish believer or a Christian believer, we get it both right, I think. Rosh Hashanah is the day he was born, but it was on the winter solstice, 3 BC, the day he was conceived. Now let's move on to Isaiah chapter 20. In that day the Lord with his severe sword, great and strong, will strike against, or that's punish, strike against Leviathan the fleeing serpent, Leviathan the twisted serpent, and he will slay the reptile that is in the sea. Now, get it, the Leviathan is not the reptile that is in the sea. And this is apparently talking about some other reptile that's in the sea. And in that day, sing to her a vineyard of red wine. I, the Lord, keep it. I water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I keep it day and night. Well, let's pick up on this Leviathan story here. And in Job, we find that in chapter 26, verse 13, it says, By his spirit he hath garnished the heavens, his hand hath formed the crooked serpent. The message is, what is that crooked serpent? Well, we learn from Job that it's in the heavens in the context of this verse. In chapter 14, recall, it says, Rejoice thou, not thou, whole Palestina, for the rod of him that smote thee is broken, for out of the serpent's root shall come forth the cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. So, let's determine what that fiery flying is. And Immanuel Kolakowski's very famous work, Worlds in Collision, he extracts from mythology over all of the world and comes to the conclusion around the time of the Exodus, there were in the skies a comet. Now he thinks that's Venus, but I think if you look at all the evidence, this was Nibiru. So reading on page 96 of Worlds in the Collision, it says, Hevelius wrote, in the year of the world 1495 BC, according to certain authorities, a comet was seen in Syria, Babylonia, and India in the sign of Jove, that's Jupiter, in the form of a disk at the very time the Israelites were on the march from Egypt. Now, in Pliny's Natural History, 91st section on the second book, it reads, a terrible comet was seen by the people in Ethiopia, Egypt, to which Typhon, the king of Egypt, really in that period, it gave his name. It had a fiery appearance, and it was twisted like a coil, very grim to behold. So we have a twisted something in the sky, and antiquity tells us more about it. Among the early authors, Lydius, Servius, Hephaestion, and Juxtinus, and addition to Pliny, the mention of Typhon the comet. This is depicted as an immense globe of fire, also a sickle, which is the description of a globe illuminated by the sun, close enough to be observed. Its movement was slow, its path was close to the sun, its color was bloody. It was not fiery, but of a bloody redness. It caused destruction in the rising and setting. And Servius writes that the comet caused many plagues, evils, and hunger. So this is the comet that undoubtedly the children of Israel saw in the sky as a smoky pillar by day and a fiery pillar by night. And not only did it destroy Egypt, but it hit the whole world at the same time. Quetzalcoatl, which was a feather-covered servant of the Mayans, no doubt had its origin with this comet. So see, the Chinese red dragon, no doubt that had its origin as the comet that appeared that caused such havoc on planet Earth about the time of the Israelites leaving Egyptian captivity. The witch on a broom. You ever wonder where that came from? Well, using your imagination a little bit, this thing probably looked like a witch on a broom, or at least it was the inspiration for that belief. In Greek mythology, the pre-Olympian Greek earth goddess Hecate was associated with night and the moon, ghosts and spirits, magic and witches and sorcery. She was known as Prytania of the dead, or the invincible queen, the goddess of enchantments and magical charms. Hecate seems to have originated in the southwest of Asia Minor and is associated with the crossroads, which is where three roads came together. She was a native of Thrace and resembles Artemis in many ways, at times being merged with her. Hecate was powerful on earth and in the sky and was accompanied by a pack of dogs. The torch was the symbol of Hecate from her search in Hades with Demeter for Persephone. So here you get the story that the Greeks, apparently their goddess Hecate was inspired probably by Nibiru in the skies. That torch being a symbol, and then accompanied by a pack of dogs. We know that Nibiru has at least 7 planets around it and is surrounded by bunches of bloody red material, which is being blown off of the red dwarf sun that constitutes the redness of this system in the sky as it passes by. In Isaiah chapter 27, Again, fury is not me. Who would set briars and thorns against me in battle? For I would go through them. I would burn them together. That's one of the things we know about the tribulation period. Men are going to be like briars. And when the Lord determines the time is right, he will burn them up. So in verse 5 it says, or let him take hold of my strength, that he may make peace with me, and he shall make peace with me. And those who come he shall cause to take root in Jacob. Israel shall blossom and bud, and fill the face of the whole world with its fruit. So good things are prophesied about Jacob. In verse 7 it says, he has struck Israel as he struck those who struck him. Or has he been slain according to the slaughter of those who were slain by him? In measure, sending it away, you contended with it. He removes it by his rough wind in the day of the east wind. Apparently the day of the east wind is the time when all these events occur in the tribulation. Therefore, by this iniquity of Jacob will be covered, and this is all the fruit of taking away his sin. When he makes all the stones of the altar like chalk stones that are beaten to dust, wooden images and incense altars will not stand. The Lord is going to destroy everything that's in opposition to him. In verse 10 it says, yet the fortified cities will be desolate, the habitation of the forsaken, and left like a wilderness. There the calf will feed, and it will lie down and consume its branches. And when the boughs are withered, they will be broken off. And women will come and set them on fire, for this is a people of no understanding. Therefore he who made them will not have mercy on them, and he who formed them will show them no favor. And it will come to pass in that day, and we know that phraseology in that day is always talking about the day of the Lord, or the tribulation period. So in that day the Lord will thresh, and threshing is a symbol of that tribulation period, because we are separating the evil from righteousness, right? So threshing is always a symbol associated with the tribulation period. And so the Lord will thresh from the channel of the river of the brook of Egypt to the brook of Egypt. So that river, it's understood that's the river Euphrates, to the brook of Egypt, and you will be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. There is a gathering that will take place at that time. And those, verse 13, so it will be in that day that the great trumpet will be blown, and they will come who are about to perish in the land of Assyria, and those who are outcast in the land of Egypt shall worship the Lord in the holy mountain in Jerusalem. So we know that there in Judaism are three trumpets that have names: first trump, the last trump, and the great trump. First trump blows at the giving of the law on Mount Sinai. The last trump blows during the Musaf, or additional prayer service, on Rosh Hashanah, when it said the gates of heaven are open. And that's very consistent with 1 Corinthians 15, 51, and 52. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all die, but we shall all be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the sound of the last trumpet. So we know these trumpets blow on particular occasions. The great trump blows during the Nilai, or closing of the gates ceremony, on Yom Kippur. So that is when we anticipate that the Lord's feet will set down on the Mount of Olives, as recorded in Zechariah 14, at the sound of the great trump. And those who are about to perish, I used to think that those who were about to perish were going to be under risk from the inhabitants of the land, but basically they're under the risk of the arrival of Nibiru and destruction on the whole planet for everyone. Everyone is going to be worried about it at that time. And then, of course, they're going to come to worship in the holy mountain in Jerusalem, because there's only one mountain, and that we know from Matthew 24, which reads, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the heavens, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he will send his angels with a great sound of the trumpet. Strike that. It's the great trumpet sound. and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So this gathering is not the gathering of the church, it's the gathering of his elect. It's those of the house of Israel, and he will gather them from the four winds with angels, and they will be brought to Jerusalem, where they will rule and reign with the Messiah there. So that explains some of the mystery in Matthew 24, and then that sign of the Son of the Man appearing in the heavens, that's most likely to be Nibiru. And here we see that South Pole telescope picture of Nibiru in 2008 when that telescope just became active. This picture was leaked to the internet, and you can see why it is an adequate sign of the coming of the Son of Man. It's a bloody red body surrounded by 7 planets which form a cross. An adequate witness of the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. And that's all for this time, and next week we'll continue on with Isaiah chapter 28.